The Olympic lifts get commonly questioned because of their level of complexity in comparison to other training movements. So if you were going to introduce an athlete who is brand new to it, let's put the caveat in that they can already front squat, they can already overhead squat, because if not, I think that would be the answer of the foundation. If they can do those two things and you were going to introduce them to a snatch or a clean or a derivative, how would you do it? What would be your first steps, and how would you go about it? And Shaun, I'll come up to you first, mate.
It's I guess it's a question that gets or a comment that gets often made about the appropriateness of Olympic weightlifting and strength and conditioning. And I guess if they've got the range to be able to front rack or catch a weight overhead, I think the best place to start is teaching them how to catch. And I think I understand where a lot of S&C coaches want to start with the specifics about why they're doing the movement in the first place, which is triple extension, which is why a lot of teaching models actually start with the pull derivatives, either like high pulls or pulling from mid-thigh and things like that. And equally, I've known people who've used those and been fairly successful with it. But I think the biggest bang for your buck comes with actually just teaching the outcome. You know where the end of the movement needs to finish, and then you just need to figure out a way to get to that point. And then you can coach all the positions prior to that to ensure that they can effectively pull that weight and receive it in the right place. I think there's also an element of there is a skill acquisition component to it, actually understanding what the outcome should feel like. And the catch does give you a lot of feedback, particularly with relation to your weight distribution and balance. So if you happen to catch the weight too far forward or too far back, you kind of get a lot of feedback out of that about how effectively you've pulled that bar. And if you do lose balance, likely that bar has actually traveled too far forward or too far back, and therefore actually compromising the main thing that you're working on, which is vertical force production.
Go Shy, don't wait for me, mate.
Yeah, I think Shaun made some really good points, and I suppose just to kind of extend on that, people do tend to start from different positions for various reasons. But if you were to teach the entire lift, I think what I've been taught previously, and I think Shaun's had experience with this coach, Brian Hamill, we're often taught this reverse chain method. But when you think about it and start to unpick the reverse chain method and why it might be useful compared to other methods, it kind of starts to make sense. So let's assume here that somebody can front squat. So now you think about, right, the front squat's a nice and controlled movement. It's very simplistic. But now you need to get into that position at speed when the bar's in front of you. How do we achieve that? So that's where you might start to utilize drills like a tall clean drop, where the bar finishes in that kind of high pull position. You might pause there and you drop under to catch. And that might help to train that feedback, which Shaun was talking about, in how to receive the barbell. Then we kind of move down that complexity chain and go, okay, so we know how to catch it. Now let's go to, well, not arguably, but the most effective part of the lift, which is then at that power position. So our torso is vertical, knees are slightly flexed, and we're in that power position. And just for terminology's sake, it is that mid-thigh position, but I'm going to call it power position for now. And then we can, from there, we can, work on the triple extension pattern. We can also then introduce the catch, because you've kind of gone through that. And then again, you can move down to the knee. So it's becoming more and more complex the further down the chain you move. But I suppose at the knee is where you might decide to kind of stop and go, okay, everything you do from above the knee is very well supported by the literature if you're just trying to elicit some sort of physical outcome. If you're trying to improve strength or power, you can do things from mid-thigh, you can do things from hang. Great. So you've learnt that, you can utilize that. If you did want to kind of graduate it onto the full lift, I think maybe then learning the first pull in isolation is always quite useful, because that way, I suppose it helps the athlete understand the movement of the barbell and their body to get to that kind of hang position, which is the end of our first pull. So once you kind of introduce that, you now have the ability to do pulls from the floor with relatively good technique, correct barbell trajectory, and there's also some understanding of the phases that they actually need to go through. And then, of course, you can go on to the full graduation of the full lift. But I'm aware that other countries teach it differently from the ground up, or maybe from the mid-thigh and then around that area. So I'd be interested to see what especially Anna kind of uses to teach. And I've been very lucky to be in one of her courses out in the States. So I suppose I'll let her take this away.
Yeah, you know what? You did a really great job explaining basically the way we set up our progressions. So I know people may be more familiar with the way British weightlifting teaches. So what we have set up right now in our most recent version, it's changed over time. And I think that's something to keep in mind. If it keeps changing, hey, you know what? There's probably different ways to do it in the context that you're in and the athletes that you're working with. It's probably going to be a little bit different. But we do just that. We work on that whole approach, give people a sense of what they're trying to accomplish, so show them what a full snatch looks like, you know. And then the biggest sort of problem that people have when they learn the lifts is you can just see their brains working. You can see the tentative sort of hesitancy of, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do and I have to think really hard about this, which makes it really tough to be explosive, right? To get to power position and punch up. Instead, you're just kind of paralyzed with, I have to do this and then this and then this. So exactly as Shyam described, you know, we started work, and Shaun, we start with the overhead squat, strengthen the receiving position, right? Get them familiar with that. Make sure they're stable overhead so they don't do anything crazy when they get it over there. And then go to the simplest position. And the simplest position, again, power position, the most bang for your buck. You can do a lot of work from there. And then build from there. You might build from a shrug to a high pull, to then a power snatch from power position. Make each piece automatic before you layer, and then transition to the hang, right? And again, the simple to complex, slow to fast. And that kind of helps with motor learning, making sure people are feeling rather than thinking, and making sure they're exploding. And then we can put it together. And I also think one of the criticisms is, gosh, it just takes so long and there's so much technique. Can you think through the lift and break it into component parts and think how we can actually teach the movement patterns as a strength exercise? So exactly, you know, as described, we should separate the lift off. Cool, let's load it, right? So let's just do the lift off and load it. That's a great exercise. Let's do a clean deadlift. Great, now we can, you know, add the lift off in that next piece. Let's load it. So it doesn't have to be, we're just empty bar, technique. You know, we can do a lot of stuff in the warm up and also in making those pieces, you know, strength exercises as we learn. And then lo and behold, they know how to pull off the floor. They know how to go from power position. Voila, we can just, you know, connect down those pieces and put it together.